Right, this is another bizarre case of the left getting it right again. On Vice magazine, of all places. I haven't read all the article, but I read a little bit of it and I said, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to just do a recording of this. Tim Ballard is the headline, has stepped away. You know, and that's a euphemism, of course, stepped away. I wonder, will we be able to read between the lines during this article and find out or discover or at least intuit, heavily infer why it is that he has stepped away, heavily deduce from Operation Underground Railroad. Org says, because look, all is not what it seems with this movie. I hope you understand that. I hope you're not caught up in the, yeah, let's own the libs, or let's sock it to the left, or like them damn Democrats are all, depots and mild cholesters. You know what I mean? The founder of the controversial is the subheadline here. The founder, that's Tim Ballard, of the controversial anti-trafficking group, left before the launch of Sound of Freedom, a surprisingly successful movie about his exploits. But if you understand what's going on behind the scenes, right, it's maybe not so surprising, because it's all a Mormon operation. And as we've learned, if you go and watch my live stream with JC Owen's most recent one, called The Truth About Tim Ballard, well, he's a Mormon. He went to BYU, that's Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, the same university that a few other famous alumni went to, including that snake oil salesman politician Mitt Romney. And who else spent some time in Provo? It was Glenn Beck. And Glenn Beck has promoted this a lot as well. And Glenn Beck was born a Roman Catholic, or Catholic, let's say anyway. Don't know how strong he was in his faith or not, but I read a little bit of his Wikipedia bio there. It's a very long Wikipedia page for Glenn Beck. His mother died in some kind of tragic but also suspicious circumstances in a boating accident, with some man who doesn't seem to have been his father. Maybe it was his stepfather, I'm not quite sure. So Glenn Beck left Provo, left his radio station job there, saying that he didn't fit in, according to his Wikipedia profile, went to California, and then at some point decided then to become a Mormon, or a member of the Church of the Latter-day Saints, at the suggestion of one of his radio colleagues who was working for the Blaze Media. So there's a lot of stuff going on under the surface that we only have to scratch a little bit to see that there is an operation going on. And the operation isn't necessarily to save kids. Gotta save them kids. No. It's to play a lot of people, to do a lot of grifting, essentially, to tug at the heartstrings and well-intentioned sympathies of right-wingers or Christian people, or people who don't really look into things but maybe have some kind of guilt about maybe their own success, or even just comfortableness in their life, that they've got a roof over their own heads, or a nice car, or a couple of nice cars, or can go on holidays, and they just feel guilty that somebody somewhere out there is having a poor life. But the thing is, it's actually, I think it all stems from a sort of a bigotry of low expectations, that people think Mexicans, or anybody south of the border between America and Mexico, that they're all just one sort of amorphous type of, I won't say amorphous, but that they're all a sort of, in their minds, a conglomerate of just different brown people who they need to feel sorry for because they're inferior to them. But they're probably having perfectly happy lives and different standards of lives because of that's what they choose to live like. It's not that they're subjugated, but they have this guilt they feel they need to pay away. And there's a lot of people taking advantage of that sort of, it's a kind of emotion that they feel in their subconscious but don't want to examine too closely, so that they just feel that, I suppose, like in religions like Catholicism, that you can go and have it all washed away by confessing your sins and then making a tithe to the church. Look, I'll stop pontificating and I'll get onto this article. But that's what I want you to understand about what's going on here, underground here. And this operation isn't to save children, it's to grift money from people who have this kind of guilt that they haven't really tried to understand or tease out or hold in the front of their mind so that they can examine it properly and, I suppose, free themselves of it by working through it rationally or reasonably, coherently even. It's a sort of a dull background ache of a guilt that they just want to get rid of in the most expedient way possible, and they think they can do it by just feel that they're contributing to something good in the world by paying for movie cinema tickets to see this movie, which is, they say, based on a true story, but so much of the elements are a mishmash of things that might have happened, possibly did happen, likely didn't happen, and if they did, they weren't done by Tim Ballard anyway. So if it's not an entire work of fiction, it's such an embellishment of whatever is the true story, that it's kind of worse than lies, because it's like the opposite of the truth, and it's causing people to. It's not just that it's causing people to lose money that maybe they can afford to lose, but it's doing people psychological harm and contributing to perpetuating the misery of people both in the US and outside of the US, both north of the border and south of the border. It's making victims out of people that shouldn't be made victims out of. It's giving them a sort of a victimhood mentality. And it's making people in the first world, what's left of it, both in America and Europe and elsewhere, it's making people feel guilty when they shouldn't, and feel like that their own existence is a crime. And that's a terrible way to live. Right, let's get on to this. Now, listen, you could listen to this computer robot lady voice reading this. Let's see if it loads up.
Tim Ballard has stepped away from Operation Underground Railroad.
I can't stand listening to that. Hopefully my voice won't be as irritating to you. Tim Ballard, the founder of Operation Underground Railroad, OUR for short. These are our children, says Joe Biden on stage quite a lot recently. I think there might be a connection there. Now, we're looking at, I wouldn't have recognised her, Mira Sorvino. She is I suppose, well, maybe she's still a movie star, but I think she was famous in the 90s more. I think that she was in a movie called Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion with Phoebe from Friends. I can't remember the name of the actress there. But anyway, Mira Sorvino and Tim Ballard attend the premiere of Sound of Freedom on June 28th, 2023 in Vineyard, Utah. I wonder, was she in the movie? I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the trailer, and I know enough about the movie from reading about it and the background case to know that it's a crock. It's basically hero flattery, stolen valor, and then it's, when people talk about fear porn, it's like the opposite. It's hero porn, like, yeah, sock it to them terrorists, or sock it to them military juntas down in Colombia or wherever, some South American country or Middle American country that everybody kind of feels guilty about not really knowing the difference between, is it Guatemala? Is it Honduras? I don't know. They're all the same kind of thing, although they don't want to admit that, I mean, in their minds, and to be honest, like, I haven't travelled in Middle America or South America to be able to understand the significant or key differences between the different sort of Hispanic countries and their cultures and their people. But I am aware that they're all fairly sure that, that they have distinct differences between them and maybe have animosities between each other. But anyway, I'll move on. I don't know enough about it to know why, but pretty sure that is the case. And what you find around the world is that we, from a distance, might look at, say, people from Cambodia or Vietnam or Korea and Japan and sort of say, they all look pretty much the same. Their cultures look the same to us from a distance. But when they're next door to each other, you find that people who live next door to each other, country-wise, nations that are next door to each other, Iran and Iraq maybe, could be another good example. Sunnis and Shias, as far as it goes with Muslims. They're all just Muslims, what's the difference? But they might see a huge difference between each other, you know? And you often find that maybe England and Ireland is another one. That they're at pains to say, oh, there's a huge difference between us, you know? But you know, talk to somebody in Africa and they might go, I don't see the difference. It's just about white people speak English. What's the difference? But anyway, like two brothers, I suppose you could say, you know, or twins even. They're all at pains to point out, oh no, we're very different from each other. Right, Tim Ballard, founder of Operation Underground Railroad, has quietly parted ways with the controversial anti-trafficking group. The news comes as Sound of Freedom, a heavily fictionalised depiction of Ballard's work for a division of ICE. Did I say division? I meant to say depiction of Ballard's work for a division of ICE. That's, what does that ICE stand for? Immigration and... Oh, I'll have to look it up. This is terrible. That I can't remember what it stands for. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Of course, as Cenk Uygur would say. Surprisingly successful... Oh, where am I? Just read anything that's on screen. Like that guy in the movie. I forget what it's called now, but anyway. I even forget the actor's name, the comedian guy's name. The Division of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and his early career as a private anti-trafficking operator continues to draw at the box office. The movie has brought in just under $50 million. I think I remember hearing that the budget for the movie was $14.5 million, so they've made 3 times their money back already. If that's the case. Largely on the strength of a marketing campaign encouraging religious audiences to not only attend the movie, but to pay it forward by buying tickets for other people. So they're saying, what a brilliant marketing strategy. Don't just buy a ticket for yourself. Buy it for other people who you don't even know. Bringing unprecedented attention to both Ballard and OUR, or OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. In recent days, sources with knowledge of OUR began to tell Motherboard, so that's some other publication. I don't know if it's leftist or not, I've heard of it, but that's all I know. That Ballard had left the organisation. By one account, he'd gone to donors in a state of upset, saying that he'd been forced out and asking for their help with a new organisation. I wonder what's going on there. We'll have to do some investigation. Well, we'll read on. Maybe this reporter has done some investigation. Another person who's worked with the group said that to the best of their knowledge, he was no longer with OUR and was focusing on his work with the Nazarene Fund, a Glenn Beck-backed organisation that has focused on religious minorities in the Middle East, but has more recently operated in Afghanistan and Ukraine. Well, I will have to look into that at some point. I mean, it sounds like a religious grift, but I don't want to assume, of course. A third person familiar with OUR fundraising, not mine, not yours, but the Operation Underground Railroad fundraising, said that they had heard just this week that Ballard had broken with the organisation. In a statement, an OUR spokesman said, founder Tim Ballard has recently stepped away from Operation Underground Railroad prior to launch of the film Sound of Freedom, they added. Matt Osborne continues to serve as the president and chief operating officer of the organisation. On LinkedIn, Osborne is listed as having served as the president and COO since February 2023, 6 months ago. Have you worked with Tim Ballard? Do you know something we should know about what's happening in the anti-trafficking community? Contact the reporters at tim.marchman@vice.com or anna.merlan@vice.com. For additional security, reach us on Signal at 267-713-9832. That's them advertising for leads in their own article. All right, Ballard has made no mention of his departure from OUR as he began a one-man press tour focused on the film and the Jim Caviezel played character based on him. Wow. He must be contractually bound to promote the movie, even though he's been... What was the word they used? I'm going to paraphrase as kicked out. Let's see if I can remember my understanding. Because on one hand they said he's stepped away from Operation Underground Railroad. But by one account, reading back here, it says he'd gone to donors in a state of upset, saying that he'd been forced out and looking to start a new organisation. Why would you need, or why would you want to start a new organisation competing if all you care about is that the organisation is saving the kids out there, the poor brown kids? And saving them exactly from what, like, you know, because if you, again, look into the case, and as JC and I did talk about there in our most recent live stream from last Saturday or Sunday, so just about 3 or 4 days ago, well, you'll see that the main focus of the story, this guy called Pedro, or maybe his real name was Jose, yeah, fine, he was Mexican, but he had American citizenship, US citizenship, and he was living with his grandmother near San Diego. So, like, you know, he wasn't being trafficked. He was being brought down to his parents, who were living in Mexicali, in Baja California, the state of Mexico, just underneath US California, by somebody who was called Mr. Buchanan, Earl Buchanan, who seems to have been, or was convicted of, abusing the boy, yes. But this story about being trafficked by cartels and this kind of thing, all made up. And Ballard wasn't even involved anyway in going down to save him or anything like that. He was in the States. Anyway, back to this article here. Ballard has made no mention of his departure from OUR as he began a one-man press tour focused on the film and the Jim Caviezel played character based on him. In recent days, he'd been interviewed on Fox News telling Jesse Watters, or Watters, should I say, that criticism of the film by mainstream media outlets was playing into the hands of depot piles, and by the New York Post, where he said, enforcing the border is the only compassionate thing to do if you care about children. Well, of course, that'll play into, you know, the beliefs of the right wing. And by the way, like, I believe in enforcing borders, and I also believe a little bit further than that, that if a country does not enforce its borders, then it is no longer a country. A country is only a country by the virtue of the fact that it is separated from other countries, legally and physically. Anyway, in inverted commas, said that enforcing the border is, in inverted commas, the only compassionate thing to do if you care about children. So the left will obviously roll their eyes and say, oh, right, you're, you know, anyway. It's amazing how easy they create political divide, you know. You're implying we don't care about children, you know. And the thing is, neither any side that's whipped up into ideological possession or frenzy about these political footballs is going to throw these stupid accusations at each other anyway. You know, that the other side is evil. But I do think that most of the left side of politics are deranged, because they're usually the people who just sort of say, what do the right believe in? Right, we're against that then. Anyway, in brackets here, back to the article. Ballard has long claimed that a porous southern border leads to... I'm just going to skip that word, trying to keep it maybe useful for YouTube, or possible for YouTube. Leads to, 3-letter word, trafficking of children. A view not shared by most experts in anti-trafficking work. Really. Who are these experts? You know, all the appeals to unknown, unseen experts. On his programme, Watters introduced Ballard as the founder of the Spear Fund. Gladius, the tip of the spear, like a dagger. It's a Masonic symbol, basically. And of course, you can look into Operation Gladio about I'm saying depot pile, but you know the word I'm saying, really. In Belgium. Look into Operation Gladio and look into a fella in Belgium called Was it Dutroux, Marco Dutroux, or something along those lines? Oh, I'll have to look it up now that I mentioned it. Now, Dutroux is French for something. The thing I'm misremembering it. Hopefully it'll get it right when I'm searching for it here. No, forgive my dead air there while I'm looking this up. Marc Dutroux, Dutroux. That was a case in Belgium where it wasn't just a case of what you can see on screen there. It seems that he was doing it to order, and the people who were clients of his who were saying, "Here, please go out and abduct a young person of a certain with certain attributes." Basically, like supposing if you were ordering a custom car or whatever, that the very people that were ordering this guy or making use of his services were politicians and judges in Belgium. So no wonder that the case was shut down, or didn't go anywhere, or the culprits. There was no more than just Marc Dutroux, prosecuted, and a bit like, say, certain Mr. Stepstein, and that all his client list weren't released as well. You know what I mean? Same thing, same things play out. And by the way, that Marc Dutroux case was back in the 80s, so nothing new under the sun here. They still play the same tricks, and then these kind of people profit on people's misery and on fictionalizing a story of it, so that then when they find out that this is all fiction, they'll then assume, oh, well, then all that stuff that is legitimately happening out there, it's all a smoke bomb and a misdirect by these people at the highest echelons of our societies. They can then say, look, see, it was all just nonsense. It was all just paranoid delusion stuff. See how these kind of psychological operations work. Anyway, back to the article here. A bare bones website for the Spear Fund lists Ballard as a co-founder along with a woman named Jessica Munoz. That's Munoz, or Z if you prefer, whose LinkedIn says she is an emergency medicine nurse practitioner in Hawaii. Ballard's biography on Instagram, the platform he's most active on, we'll have to have a look, it describes him as Ours founder and the current CEO of the Nazarene Fund. So Nazarene, sounds like it's, to do with Nazareth, the birth of Jesus, the nativity. So I'll have to look into that later, but no doubt that it is connected to Christianity, and that maybe he's moving from the trafficking grift to the Christianity grift with the help of the Jim Caviezel star from The Passion of the Christ. So maybe that's as lucrative, if not more so, to mainline the Christian grift. Though the website has few additional details, back to the article here, a description reads, The Spear, that's SPEAR, and we'll have to find out what that stands for. The Spear Fund relies on experts in the field of anti-trafficking to consult on its many projects. A donation page is already active. Well, I'll have to search to see what SPEAR stands for then. And again, sorry for any dead air here. Maybe sorry for not doing my preparation, but this is, I suppose, look, more honest here anyway. To do it live, I'm discovering it as you're discovering it, even if it's the lazy way to do it. Right, Spear Funds, here at home, the Spear Fund. Oh, I wonder, does it stand for Sound of Freedom, something or other? The Spear Fund, inspired by the Sound of Freedom movie, coming soon. What does it stand for, though? I'll have to read it from the crest here. I'm trying to read upside down and sideways. Spiritual peace, education, action, and redemption. So there you are. To pay your guilt away by donating to this charity, then maybe you can have redemption then. That's the way they do it. Well, I'll have to bookmark that and come back to it. Amazing, isn't it? That they always have parallel grifts going on. Horizontal integration, I think that might be called in business. Right. Ballard Ballard. Back to the article. Who was appointed by the Trump administration as co-chair of the public-private partnership. By the way, public-private partnership. That's the definition of fascism. Government working with private corporations. So Ballard, who was appointed by the Trump administration as a co-chair of the Public-Private Partnership Advisory Council to end human trafficking, like to end slavery, to end poverty, to end drug abuse. You can't end things that, are endemic, I suppose, in the hearts of, well, maybe people who take drugs aren't evil, but like, it's like sort of saying end all vice in human beings. Oh, we'll do that. How do you do that? Well, people just need to keep paying us money, and then with enough money, we'll be able to solve that problem. We'll be able to solve the capacity for people to get addicted to things that are harmful for them, or the capacity for people to do harm to others. We'll set up a charity for that. But what if you're not able to end those problems? Oh, well, we'll keep getting money then, And so that's why, ending hunger in Africa, let's say, they don't want to end it because that's the end of their business then. So all these charities, it always becomes in their self-interest to keep the problem going. And so then it'll occur to them, well, we want more money, more revenue coming in. Well, then let's make the problem worse. That's why the problem never seems to get solved, because it's not in their financial interest to solve the problem. They want to have a regenerating flow of income. All right, back to the article here. Like a subscription model, I'll say, subscribe to poverty, and you find it very hard to cancel then your subscription. So this advisory council to end human trafficking, a group tasked with advising the federal government on anti-trafficking policy, has long been a highly controversial figure. That's Tim Ballard. A variety of lurid stories he's told about his and ours improbably cinematic exploits have turned, on closer inspection, to not be accurate. And by the way, me, as somebody who is, quite far to the right of the Republican Party or conservative parties in any country, right? Quite far to the right. But not because I'm a right-wing whatever. It's just because I am somebody who appreciates the truth and honesty and maybe a bit of pragmatism as well. But we don't see any of that. And I'm sick of all the lies. So it's not like I agree with this because I agree with Vice magazine or the people who write it. No, it's just they happen to be correct this time. Mostly, anyway, so far. And it is a crock, and they are lurid stories, and I think they've used some good adjectives here. And I think they've written this article quite well so far. Which is a surprise these days, because most of it just copy-paste stuff from press releases, because they're lazy as well as politically biased. But anyway, back to the article here. So these improbably cinematic exploits have turned, on closer inspection, to not be accurate, and the organisation was the subject of a protracted criminal investigation examining, among other things, whether our operators engaged in I didn't want to say the word, acts with human trafficking victims, whether our operations had created demand for trafficking victims. Right, whether our operations had created demand for trafficking victims. Well, like I said, all charities seem to, bizarrely, but it's not so bizarre when you understand they've got a profit motive, even if they say they're not for profit. But not for profit just means, hey, we can claim we didn't make a profit after paying all our shareholders and employees, and broke even basically, and keep breaking even while they all have careers. And support themselves and live quite lavish lifestyles off the back of whatever charity they claim their mission is to, end, whether it's poverty or trafficking or whatever else it might be, hunger. So yes, I could, if they didn't make the problem worse, it would be the one charity probably in the world that hasn't ended up making the problem worse by their meddling, interfering, deliberate exacerbation of the problem, I would say. And I'm not just cynical. Behind every cynic, as George Carlin George Carlin said, behind every cynic is a disillusioned optimist or idealist. Yeah, disillusioned idealist. Because I did once think the world could be great if only we could just fix the last few problems. But now I realise that everybody in the world pretty much has been making everything worse since really forever. Since long before I got here, long before any of you got here, long before our parents even got here. Anyway, whether our operations had created demand for trafficking victims, whether our had committed human trafficking itself, I don't have anything to point at to prove it, but yes, I strongly suspect that they have, yeah. By enticing people who are not previously traffickers with large sums of money. That investigation ultimately closed without charges being brought, but did real damage to the organisation's image with donors, according to multiple sources who have spoken with Vice News over the past 3 years. Our, nonetheless, raised tens of millions of dollars each year, based largely on Ballard's image. That's the thing. He's a good-looking chap. He's got the halo effect, and people are willing to pay him money because he looks good to them. Looks like an all-American hero. He looks like the $6 Million Man, played by Lee Majors, if you remember him. He looks like G.I. Joe. He looks like, essentially, if you kind of look over in Europe, he looks like, the best soldiers that the fatherland could produce. So it's very confusing, I know, for us guys who would like to go back to a time where people were healthy and fit and strong, and an idealized image of the sort of masculine ideal, really, I suppose, that we all wish we could look like. So anyway, our, nonetheless, raised tens of millions of dollars each year, based largely on Ballard's image and reputation, and that of the supposed jump team. Sounds so uber cool, doesn't it? Jumping into the jungle to rescue Pedro's sister. Which, and by the way, that never happened. She was always at home, never getting, as far as anybody knows, trafficked or abused even by anybody, just living with the grandmother near San Diego. Which our claimed went abroad to enact daring raids and rescues of trafficked women and children. There's another story of some guy called Gardy Mardy or whatever, a pastor's son. The whole thing seems highly dubious, that he got abducted. I can't remember what was the story, by some rival pastor or some people who thought he was rich because he was a pastor, and he just kept saying, like, oh, I can't sleep. From Haiti, by the way. I haven't been able to sleep for years. But like Tim Ballard comes in and just rescues him from an orphanage or something like this, who he then conflated that story with Pedro. It's all highly dubious at the very least. In recent years, back to the article here, Ballard has firmly established himself in the right-wing media ecosystem and Sound of Freedom. And by the way, all that right-wing media ecosystem, whether it's Blaze Media, whether it's Ben Shapiro's outfit, whatever that's called, I forget what it is, but it doesn't matter. All those people, Tim Walsh, Dave Rubin, I mean, he's the voice of conservative America, and he's, in inverted commas, married to another man with surrogate children, that he adopted. That's our guy. That's the far right, alt-wing right conservative people. Come on, man. Where are we? They've really turned us all inside out, haven't they? We keep having to pay money to Dave Rubin to fight the good fight for us to conserve America and our American values, family values. Come on. It's so laughable and pathetic, and we're so pathetic. I'll speak for myself. I'm so pathetic, if you're not quite willing to sort of say that about yourself. But anyway, nearly finished the article here. Here we are. So Sound of Freedom has provided him a fresh opportunity to promote his brand as the leading authority, but he's kind of seems like he's lost his brand, and now he's got to start over again with Spear. as the leading authority on trafficking to new audiences. That's Operation Underground Railroad. As if, they're sneaking the slaves out, and it implies that he's sneaking them across the border. He's taking them out of their homes, whether it be in Haiti or, Cartagena, Colombia, or wherever, somewhere deep in the jungle, or whether it's, Guatemala or Mexico, wherever, right? And they want us to not really look into specifically where exactly it is in some, Latin America type country. They don't want people to go anything beyond just a surface level understanding about any of this. But this railroad anyway, implying that they are the ones bringing them into America. Is that what the Conservatives want? Because that isn't what a Conservative value is. The Conservative value is keep our borders secure and keep the people south of the border where they already are. Anyway, Our referred further questions to a media contact for Ballard. Of course, they all have loads of PR people. I'll finish this now, last 3 lines. Who's also listed as a spokesperson for Angel Studios, the force behind the distribution and marketing of Sound of Freedom. I have a feeling that Glenn Beck is associated with Angel Studios. I'm going to look up his Wikipedia, just to see if I can find it. That person did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Is that the entire article? Seems to be. Right, we got through it then, and then for an addendum, I look up Glenn Beck's Angel Studios. I think it is Glenn Beck's anyway. Let's see if I can confirm that. Boy, yeah, and sorry for any dead air here where I'm waiting for extremely slow internet to look up. Angel Studios. Angel Studios, American media company and film distribution studio based in Provo, that's Utah. It operates the over-the-top video on-demand service Angel Studios. The streaming service is available worldwide. Maybe this is what JC was saying, is like a Christian grift version of Netflix. And it says its founders are Neil Harmon, Jeff Harmon, Jordan Harmon, Daniel Harmon, and Benton Crane. Is Neil Harmon the guy? That sounds a bit like the guy who created Rick and Morty, is it? Or am I confusing it with somebody else? Look, I'd better just see. Can I see if Glenn Beck is... He's not listed on this, so maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I'll have to come back to Angel Studios maybe in a minute. Glenn Beck. Excuse me. Now he's got a very long Wikipedia article here. No. Okay, it's just coming with evangelical. That's interesting, Chris. Evangelical. Look, maybe that was a misremembering of something. But he is involved with Blaze. So he is... Yeah, I think he's still employed with the Blaze. And maybe his own media company was bought by the Blaze, and now he's employed by the Blaze as well. So Glenn Beck is the CEO, founder and owner of Mercury Radio Arts, the parent company of his television and radio network, the Blaze. But look, maybe I'm wrong that he's got any involvement in Angel Studios. I have to come back to that. Maybe that was a hit and a miss. Look, I'll end there without having it go on too long. And look, if you're listening in July of 2023, it would be nice to, I suppose, put an end to this grift while it's ongoing, rather than it allow them to morph into something else and bury the old corporation and just start up the same thing but under a new corporate name, which is what they always do. Okay, cheers for now. Thanks for listening, and listen to my next live stream with JC, and maybe we'll go into a bit more of this. Bye for now.